Welcome to the Healing Train. I am your coach, Bevon Squires, and today we are sponsored by Spirit Source Connection. But the reason we're here today is because it is the Healing Train, where ordinary people come to talk about their extraordinary stories. I tell you what, trauma healing and the trauma journey is not the same for everyone, but what we do know is there are going to be ups and downs and twists and turns along the way. And today we have a passenger for you. We will not disappoint. You know, I love bringing passengers on that are going to be authentic, transparent, and just allow you a bird's eye look into their actual process. And the person I have for you today is a wonderful lady. I know her through a mutual friend of ours. We met and we just clicked. You know how when like minded people get together, you just feel that energy? You know what I'm talking about. Well, this is exactly how I felt when I met this woman. I tell you, Dr. Ramothea Webster is her name. She is a double doctorate. I'm talking PhD and MD. Wow, wow, wow. She is a combat veteran, has done surgeries out in the field. I tell you, I believe there's nothing she cannot do. But just like all of us, we all have had our opportunities to go through trauma, to find a mindset to get us through it, to achieve some wonderful things, and then to sustain all of that momentum. As you know, I wrote a book and it's called The Energy Harvest. And so today we will be talking about the energy harvest. And Ramathea is going to talk to us about her process. And with no further ado, Ramathea Webster, can you please come on and say hello to our community?
Hello. How are you doing, Bevon? How are you doing? How's everyone doing on the healing train? I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. Thank you so much for allowing me to be a host with you and being part of this interview. I'm like so honored to be here. And like you said, we're like kindred spirits. We're sisters for life now. We're like connected at the hips because it was like that instant bond that you said a mutual friend brought us together, right? And like within one phone call, right? We connected, saw each other 24 hours later, unplanned. It was like, okay, we're together forever. And then now we're here together on the show. So I'm so excited today. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, you're so welcome. And you know, when we met and I heard her story, I thought she is going to be perfect for the healing train.
Oh,
And so here we are today, and I can't wait for everyone to hear your story. Now, of course, we all have some trauma in our life, whether we've been able to recognize it, address it, acknowledge it, or what have you. For me, growing up in our home, I had no idea that I was being psychologically abused. I had no idea that I was being emotionally neglected. There were not the words that were ever used in our home. I thought it was just normal. But what I did notice about myself is that I felt like I needed more nurturing from my mom for some reason. And of course, there were five children, and it just didn't seem like there was enough mom to go around. You know what I mean? And so I
yes.
found myself acting out in ways that were crying out for desperation, but I didn't have the words to say, hey, I need you more, mom. I need some nurturing. And so I acted it out like a lot of us do. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's how I was able to, oh, of course, the punishment that came after the acting out. And it just seemed like it was for always the same thing. But, why can't you be in this house by 10 p.m.? That's your curfew. Why are you always 10:03, 10:05, as if you're going to bend the rules somehow? I just thought I had to have it my way and I wasn't going to be satisfied until I got it my way.
Yes, yes.
Something's wrong with that, right? The rest of my brothers and sisters were so compliant. They did everything they were supposed to do, but no, no, not me. And one day my mom asked me, she said, why can't you be like the rest of the children? And that's
Mm-hmm.
when I knew something was different about me. And
Yes.
so, what about you, Ramathea? How were you able to identify any sort of trauma or negative energy, if you will, patterns and behaviors to talk about your trauma?
And it's interesting, like I said, we're kindred spirits and we have so many parallels. So I'm the oldest of five children. right? So I think my trauma is for me a little bit different as being the oldest and the responsibility of having 4 younger children underneath me and making sure we stay safe in New York City, right? And then just knowing being street smart and savvy and realizing my mom would punish me or even chastise me if I wasn't keeping my siblings safe. So you feel like it's a lot of responsibility at a very young age. And I remember being in a park, and it's interesting how this just popped into my memory bank, is that I was in the park on the ground on this like chain fence in Queens, right? In Jamaican Queens. And I'm crying and crying and crying profusely. And I remember this little old lady comes up to me. And then she's like, child, why are you crying? Why are you crying? And I'm just bawling. And I'm just looking at her. It's like, because I am the oldest. And then she was like, oh my goodness. And I didn't realize, I was probably like 7 or 8 at the time, but I didn't realize the amount of pressure that I had on me of being the oldest child and us having to really survive, right? During those periods of time. We come from very, very humble beginnings. We were poor, welfare recipients, living in the city and just trying to like come home. They have to look both ways, going up the stairwells, going onto the elevator, knowing how to navigate different scenarios and still stay safe coming home from school because my mom and my dad, they weren't able to sometimes pick us up in the bus stop.
Mhm.
So I think that's when I first realized the heavy burden that I had on my shoulders as being the oldest. And then just throughout time, I have very strict parents, a very, very strict mother, and which at times I never always agreed with how she chastised us, but it was something that we just kind of plunged through. And I realized that I just developed coping mechanisms that you don't realize until you get older, and probably when you're in relationships, that certain things will kind of come into play. And then trauma has been so part of my life that it became second nature. So I actually would probably ignore signs because for me, it's been that personality just kept going, kept going, kept going. You never had took time to reflect and see what was going on. This was just life. And it's like,
Sure.
we all go through trauma, right? I mean, like you guys, the other world, the Cosby kids, that's what's on TV. Real world, you're going to go through some stuff. So for me, I just kind of accepted it. And I never really thought that I was really different from anybody else. I just thought this is just a way of life and this is what we do. Just suck it up and just keep moving.
Wow, that is so interesting that you say that because that's exactly the way it happens. We have the little traumas, or I won't say little, but we have the traumas that we do. And then our mind decides they're self preservation. Our
Yes.
mind is like, I have to find a way to get through this and not die. I have to find a way to get through this and have a positive outcome at the end. And so we develop these responses, trauma responses, coping mechanisms, if you will, to get us from point A to point B, from one feeling to the next feeling, if we're allowing ourselves to feel anything in between. So I
Yeah.
can definitely understand that. And there's so many people out there who's listening to you today saying, wow, I do that too, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
as you were saying, ignoring those red flags, ignoring those signals. And for me, I tell you, one of the other ways that I knew that something was amiss is I had a trauma response of eating my feelings, eating my emotions. And I am 5'2.5". Okay. So
Mhm.
that was not a good look. I got on the scale one day. I got on a scale one day, and that scale said 184 pounds. And I'm five
Wow.
two. And I thought, whoa, something is going on here. What is
Yes.
going on? And so I had to take a look at that and try to dismantle that trauma response so that I'm able to do something else. But just
Mhm.
like anyone else, if you don't know that it's trauma related, you don't know what to do. And that's why I'm so happy about this platform because you and I get to tell our stories so that other people can see what's possible, so that they
Yes.
can see, you know what, if they made it through their trauma, then they can make it through their trauma as well. If we made it through our trauma, they can make it through their trauma as well.
Indeed.
Right. And
Indeed.
so as we're moving forward, talking about being the oldest child and what that meant for you and the pressure that meant. keeping them safe, coming home from school, probably making sure they had something to eat once you got home and all of those other things. I was the
Mhm.
oldest girl. And so those were the kinds of things that I had to contend with as well, making sure that my brother, who was 8 years younger than me, making sure his diaper was changed, making sure the bottles were made, making sure, helping mom out with dinner and things like that. These were just the roles that we had to play. And nobody bothered to say, do you want to have this role? No one bothered to say, hey, how you doing with that role I gave you?
Exactly. Exactly.
But like you said, we
Yes.
do the best we can until we can do better, until we learn
Yes.
more and can do better. And so
Yes.
as we move through the process, we're going to move on now to the set phase of the workbook. We've just identified the ways that we were able to see that there was trauma. And now as we move to the set phase, we want to talk about what did it take for you, right?
Mhm.
To begin to heal from the trauma, to begin to change those trauma responses and those behaviors and patterns, right? For
Mhm.
me, for me, I being able to look at it and to identify it was one thing, but then I had to learn how to not apologize. Forgive me. I had to learn how to forgive
Yes.
myself, right?
Key. That's key.
I had to learn how to forgive my father, because in my situation, he was the parent, the disciplinary parent. He was the one that lashed out and that dealt out the punishments. And so that's where I can say the abuse or the mistreatment came from him. Now I don't blame him as a person, because he was only doing the best he could with what he had.
Yes.
However, I was damaged. And that's
Yes.
the thing that we're looking at here. Not blaming, but for so long I was in the blame game. I
Yeah.
couldn't get past it because I couldn't stop blaming him. And then I couldn't stop blaming myself for not being perfect, for not being able to adhere to the rules so that he didn't have to treat me this way. It was just so convoluted with my feelings and my thoughts all mixed together. But what I was able to see was blaming him was not going to help my situation. And so I
Yeah.
was able to forgive him and understand that he did the best he could. And that way I was then able to go into healing my situation. But before I was able to apologize to myself, right, and forgive him for what he did, healing was just not possible for me. I was not available for healing. So, what about you? What can you tell us about your process as you begin to heal? You said 7, 7 years old, being the oldest of four siblings, and then as you went on, you saw the patterns and behaviors. How are you able to get out of those patterns and behaviors and develop some new ones that could give you a brighter outlook forward?
And that's a very good question, because I would say it took me years before I was able to really open my eyes. And because I've been through, like I said, multiple traumas in life, I've been through two domestic violence marriages. I've been, sexually abused, and then I've been like, when you think about in terms of domestic violence, you think the physical, is one thing, but just the verbal, right? The spiritual, the financial, the sexual components of that, and the isolation, and all just going through this while I'm in medical school, right? And still trying to like achieve a goal of, being a doctor. And then also being in the military, and then going through the different traumas of that, and be a combat surgeon, deployed 6 times, did social special operations, and also the dynamics of being a woman in a very male dominating unit overseas, and the challenges that go associated with that, and just being a woman in medicine, and the challenges, going along with that.
Wow.
And honestly, I didn't really understand that even with all those traumas, I'm like, my coping mechanism, and like I was trying to talk to you before, was very immature coping mechanism, is avoidance, right? So I would avoid those red flags. I would avoid what was affecting me. I would avoid anything that would slow me down. And that it was a type A personality. I was a workaholic. So I worked through my pain. So as I achieved all my goals, achieved all these degrees, I was literally avoiding my past, my traumas, things that would weigh me down. Mental health was very important to me. So I remember even in the medical school, I would look forward to Fridays at 1 o'clock. Every week, I would have these mental health sessions, and that was helped me get through medical school, because I was in a time during that period of time, and my second marriage was very, very, very abusive. So that kind of just helped me to like heal, but then also to keep going, even though it's still in the midst of that. And I didn't realize truly like a wake up call as probably until my son started to hurt. So because and just to kind of like backtrack, throughout my life, I had a lot of deaths. I remember being in funerals from age 4 or 5 years old, and that's I've been going to a funeral multiple times a year. Even this past year, we had over 21 deaths in our family, and we have come from a very large family. So, and then being a doctor and seeing death, and being downrange and having death, it's like death has always been a big thing. But I've always learned how to like cope. Like you kind of numb, you compartmentalize things, right? So and it's not necessarily healthy, because you try to like put in a little box and you figure we'll address it later. Put on the rug, we'll address it later. So a lot of these boxes pile up, pile up, pile up. And you see this big mound, but you ignore it. It's like, oh, it's not there. I'm just gonna like, hike up this mound, right? Hike up this mountain and just keep it moving. So one time when I was deployed, and when I was at Burkina Faso in Africa, unfortunately I got a phone call that my stepdaughter, who I look as my daughter, I helped raise her, passed away unexpectedly at age 23 from an ectopic pregnancy that ruptured. And I got word when I was in the middle of coming back from a mission. And I was totally, totally devastated. And now I'm out of the country. I'm taking care of everybody else's children, and I'm not even home to take care of my own. And I had a lot of guilt. Like, if I was home, and especially as a doctor, would she still be alive today? Would I prevented her from actually becoming septic and dying at home, versus telling her to go straight to the hospital and helping the doctors to, help her? So I kind of lived with that regret for at least 3 years. And then in that process, with my son, I was being overprotective of him and almost being like a helicopter mom. And because my world was falling apart and I was losing control, only thing I felt that I could accomplish is making sure his life was perfect, that everything what he needed was great. But in the meantime, when I was doing that, I was making life worse for him. I was smothering him so, so much that I didn't realize that I was affecting him physically and mentally, emotionally, to a point he came home from school one day and he started crying profusely. And he comes up to me and he's like, Mom, I can't take it anymore. And I was like, he's a teenage boy, probably, 13, 14 years old. I was like, probably something's happening with school, with work, whatever. He said, Mom, I can't take it. I can't take it. You putting too much pressure on me. And I was like, It's like, maybe, it's like, teenage boy, he's probably just acting out like pressure, like what kind of pressure, right? And then he actually went deeper and he said, Mom, you don't realize how much pressure you're putting on me. To the fact that I know where we keep the guns. I know where we keep the ammunition. I know the combination to the safes. There's nothing stopping me right now from getting this gun, getting this magazine, loading up this gun, and shooting myself right in front of you. And that's when my mouth dropped. And that's when I had a realization that I needed to get help, not just for myself, it's for my son. So I already lost a child. I couldn't afford to lose another one because of my ignorance and because I was avoiding my hurts and pains and not addressing what I was going through. And I was transferring that on him. And that wasn't being appropriate, and it wasn't being fair, and it was putting too much pressure for a young male unnecessarily. And that's when I was like, you know what? I need to get this help. I need to get better. I need to be stronger. I need to survive the proper way. And that's when I had my wake up call.
Wow, Ramothea, oh my goodness, that was so powerful what you just said. And it wasn't that you didn't trust your son. It wasn't that you hadn't given him the coping skills to be safe and brave and all of that. It was just because of your own fear. You were too protective of him out of the love that you had for him and the fear of losing him like you did your daughter. Wow, that is so powerful. So powerful. And I can see from a parent standpoint, even though I'm not a parent, I can see that maybe my father had some of that thought process in his mind. Here I am, a daughter, you know what I mean, kind of a wild child. He can't properly protect me if I won't behave, if I can't mind. So he grounded me. I spent so much of my life grounded
Yes.
because that was the only way he could probably protect me from myself and from the streets, was to ground me. but
Yeah.
but it wasn't healthy for me, in the long run. But I see
Mhm.
that in your attempt to protect your son, you saw the detriment, right? And
Mhm.
so in my father's attempt to protect me, I saw the detriment in that, but from a parent standpoint. So thank you, because I have never really ever seen it from this standpoint. I have never looked at it like this. So thank you. I'm sure there's someone out here in our community who is hearing you say this and can probably say to themselves, oh my God, I do that too, you know? And
Mhm.
how do you trust the universe? How do you trust God and say, you know what? He's your child. You gave him to me. I know that you can take care of both of us, but how do you let go? How do you release the reins and allow
Mhm.
him to have his own experiences and you be okay? You know
Yes.
what I mean? I
Yes.
know for me, I had to go to therapy. I heard you say you had your mental health call on Fridays at 1 o'clock. I'm
Yes.
telling you what, therapy saved my life. It was
Okay.
such a big, for 8 years, consecutively, I
Yes.
was in therapy. And,
Mhm.
something else that you were talking about, how, you just start moving and shaking, ignoring those red flags, just getting it done, whatever needs to be done, ignoring the hurts, ignoring the pains, just keeping it moving. I don't have time for that. I'll put it in a little box. I'll get to it later. And I can so relate to that, because that's
Mhm.
exactly what I was doing when my roommate committed suicide about 10 years ago, and this year was the 10th year anniversary of that.
Mhm. Yeah.
And prior to this year, I was always so busy. I was either in a relationship, or I was doing a project. I always had something, going to school, because that took
Yeah.
up so much of my time and so much of my energy. I was able to hide behind that so that I didn't have to deal with the feelings and the guilt that I was feeling for not being able to save her that day. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
just like just
Mhm.
like there are spiritual injuries, which are the things that other people do to us, we also cause our self pain through our moral injuries,
Yeah.
right? Through that
Yes.
guilt and the shame of thinking we should have been able to change that situation. We should
Yeah.
have been someplace other than where we were, so we could
Yes.
have done something differently. And
Yes.
so being able to accept the reality of that situation is really huge, is really
Huge.
a huge burden. You know what I'm saying? And it takes a lot to forgive yourself and to apologize, to your daughter for not being there when you felt like she needed you the most.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, that's spoiler, my new book. Spoiler,
Wow.
it's called Shadows, right? It's called Shadows, and it has to do
Mhm.
with guilt, shame, and remorse,
Yes.
of injuries, moral injuries, things that we have done or not done for another individual. So that'll be coming up this year.
Yay. Can't wait. Can't wait. Can't wait.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you so much for your transparency, being able to talk about all of the forms of trauma that you have endured. There's someone out there who can identify with all of that, especially the domestic violence and the abusive relationships and marriages. I think there's more women out here than not who
Yes.
have actually gone through something like this. And so thank you for being so transparent with that. Yeah.
Of course. Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. And so as you were able to continue to move through your process and start dealing with some of these feelings, navigating some of these feelings that you were going through with the trauma, and the fear and the guilt and all of these things, once you were able to get past that, right?
Hmm.
Um, what were I know therapy was one of the methods that you used. What else did you use besides the avoidance? We
Hmm.
know that you use that as well, but what are some other positive
Yes.
tools that you use to navigate through those situations?
Yes. So for me personally, I always say for me, my PTSD garden. So I actually picked up the skill of gardening because that was a good outlet for me. I love science, right? I love plants. I love anything dealing with nature, bugs, botany, anything that was dealing with the earth. And I felt like I could get grounded in the earth. I feel like put my hand in the soil was healing. It's like that energy sources that comes from the soil. And I know people, hopefully other people could probably recognize with that as well. But for me, it was just powerful to have like just put my mind and energy and time in a garden and see something grow. To a point when I first started, I didn't care if I got crops or not. It was the process actually starting from a seed and then watching it mature into something very, very beautiful, something that's blossoming, right? So that was my outlet. So if I needed to just get away, I would just put myself zone, right? Playing music. It's another way I coped as well. And then just it being one with earth. And then, like I said, with music for me, I did music therapy too for a while. And music therapy for me, music and art therapy was a lot of good outlets for me. And I love the fine arts. I love music. I love dancing, those things that you realize that people you take for granted, but just with the melody of your beats. So using beats per minute. So if you're very, for example, sad and you're depressed, and it's like, you feel like you're in a slump, you could actually do a playlist that slowly increases like 80 beats per minute to 140 beats per minute to help you increase your mood. And then with the goal, whatever the mood you want to end up with, that's the finale of the songs in your playlist. So you could actually curtail and move your mood and emotions based on the music selection that you have. And so for me, I use music when I wake up throughout the day, if I'm doing my chores, if I'm driving before I go to bed. So I will wake up to music. That was like my alarm. That slowly have the lights coming on, slowly have the music coming on. If I need to get pumped up to do chores, I would get like some like good old or salsa or some Zumba music or some Afro beats, kind of thing, reggaeton, whatever, like to keep me pumping really high, kind of thing, to kind of help me do that. And then like smooth jazz, something mellow, something instrumental at night to help me calm my brain, because our brain just races, right, all the time, but just kind of help it like, hey, we need to slow our roll, get ready to transition and let our body to release. And music was that therapy for me to kind of help me steer my mood depending what situation I was going through that day.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so exciting. I can definitely relate to that because one of the things, and I'm happy to hear you talk about all of those positive outlets, the gardening. I tried to garden, but
Mm-hmm.
I wanted them to grow the way I wanted them to grow. I wanted to water them the way I wanted to water them. I
Yes.
wanted, and of course, they're not going to grow. You have to not be self-centered. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? You have to
Yes.
allow the seed to take, to be the focal point here, not what I want. And
Yes.
I just wasn't, I didn't have the patience for it. And so even now, a friend of mine left the country for a year and gave me her plants. And I
Mm-hmm.
prayed, God, please don't let me kill her plants while
Mm-hmm.
she's gone. And
Yes.
of them. I didn't kill any of them. And so
Yay.
I know I'm so excited to see that maybe I do. And then I got a few plants of my own after that. Now they
Yeah.
didn't come from seeds, but I did have one that came from a leaf. And I was so proud of it. Oh my goodness. I felt so accomplished when
Yes.
that little leaf started becoming a stem and then another little leaf came from it. I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it.
That's
I couldn't
awesome.
believe it. Yes, it was so
Yes.
therapeutic. So happy to
Right?
say that. Yes. And so one of the things that I do, as you were talking about music and the beats, and I look
Mm-hmm.
at frequencies because frequencies
Yeah.
are we're energetic. We have frequencies, brain frequencies, body frequencies, and so
Yes.
I got into understanding the different frequencies and
Mm-hmm.
I play them at night because some research that I saw was telling me that 80% of my daily practices
Uh-huh.
are subconscious. They are
Huh.
being controlled by my subconscious mind. And so
Yes.
I
Yeah.
know that when I'm asleep, my conscious mind is asleep, but my subconscious mind is awake. And so I thought,
Mhm.
well, if my subconscious mind is controlling so much of my life, I want to make sure that I've got some good stuff in that subconscious mind. And so
Yes.
at night on my way to bed, I would always, and I still do this, I program my mind while I'm asleep. I'll
Yeah.
listen to an audible, something, that's going to edify my mind, give me a new mindset. Sometimes I listen to the frequencies, depending on what it is that I need, whether it's relaxation, rejuvenation, the affirmations and all of these things,
Yes.
pouring back into myself to combat all of the negativity that had been poured into me. And once you release all of that, now you have space that needs to be filled with some good stuff. And so these
Yeah.
were the things that I was able to fill my life back up with. And it has made such a huge difference. And so I'm so happy, you brought that out today about the music and the frequencies and the beats and things like that. So
Yeah. And I'm so
see you
happy.
now jumping around to your reggaeton while you're in there cleaning your house, doing the vacuum, got your jazz going.
Yes, yes, yes. So I'm so happy you mentioned that too, because I actually use the exact same techniques to get me through medical school. So yes, so people don't understand the power of the subconscious mind. And so if anybody who's listening to this is powerful, that you could really truly reprogram your brain in so many different ways while you're sleeping. And you could incorporate new memory and build upon I would say thoughts and processes and like learning mechanisms. Like for me in medical school, right? I had to learn so many different things and different organ systems and how the body worked, that if I would listen to my different audios and I would actually do my own audios too of my notes and listen to that while I was sleeping, because while you're hearing, and it's one of the ways of learning, right? Hearing, you're seeing, you're writing. Even I would dance out certain scripts to help me remember certain things in medicine. So, and you could do the same thing with, say, with mood and with learning. You could do it with so many different things, with music, with the frequencies, white noise, brown noise, whatever you want to do. Help me with meditating. I even like my Bible app. I'll listen to that as I go to sleep, even now, that helps bring down my anxiety. So whatever you could do to help positively cope through the day stresses, it's beautiful. So thank you for bringing that up, because I think it's very, very powerful to help your subconscious mind to also develop, not just your conscious mind, but also your subconscious mind.
Absolutely. And it does make a difference too. So all
Yes.
righty, guys. We are here talking to Dr. Ramothea Webster. She is so wonderful. I'm so happy to have her on today as our passenger. She's talked to us today about how she was able to identify the trauma in her life of being the oldest sibling and being held accountable for the safety and the welfare of her family. She talked about the other different types of trauma that she's been through out in the field, in the combat zone, domestic violence in the family, and the loss of loved ones throughout the years. And then she went on to tell us about how she coped with them. Obviously, she realized that avoidance was not the coping mechanism that she needed. So she was able to change that up
Yes.
and decided to incorporate some therapy and some music therapy and art therapy and all these other wonderful things. And we are having such a blast here today. I know you guys are loving her. You can thank me later.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Now we are going to roll on into the achieve phase of
Yes.
the program, where we
Yeah.
get to talk about all of the wonderful things that we can achieve once we have identified the trauma, forgiven anyone that we want to blame for their trauma, taken responsibility for our healing, and now we get to achieve some wonderful things. I
Yeah.
remember I remember having a dream for the first time in my life. I remembered sitting down and actually charting out what I wanted to happen in my life. I wanted a degree, I wanted a career, I wanted a relationship, I wanted all of these things. And I was able to finally believe that it could possibly, maybe happen for me. And then
Yes.
I was able to, my dad used to say this thing and it has stuck with me over the years. You have to plan your work and then you have to work your plan.
Yes.
Oh
Yes.
yes. And so
Love it.
I know, right? Isn't that
Mhm.
powerful? But it's so true. I was
Yeah.
able to sit down and plan the steps to achieve my goal. What is it going to take? Okay, you're going to need some education. Okay, then you're going to need this. Then you're going to need this. Okay, how about your resume? Okay, now that you're prepared, now all you need to do is have some confidence and go get it. And so I was able to
Hmm.
take little baby steps to get to
Hmm.
the point where today I have some wonderful things happening in my life, things that I would have never ever have imagined. You know,
Yeah.
I don't have to sleep with a knife under my pillow anymore because
Hmm.
I am safe and secure in the life that I'm living today, in the people that I'm associating with today, in my relationship with God. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
And
amen.
myself safe today. You know,
Mm-hmm.
relationships are thriving because I don't have to have my way anymore all the time. I'm able
Mm-hmm.
to consider another individual as we're working through the relationship. So many wonderful things have happened in my life since I've been able to heal from the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Went on and got my master's degree. You know, this healing train, the book, all of this stuff happened. And had I not been able to achieve the healing, I wouldn't be here today and you wouldn't be here either. And so we want to talk
Yes.
to you about all of the wonderful things that you've been able to achieve over the years now that you have healed from your trauma, you have developed some more positive behaviors and patterns. What does your success look like? And we know success looks different for everyone, but we want to hear
Mhm.
about your success now that you've been able to work through all of those different traumas in your life and get some healing. So what does your success look like for you today?
So success comes like a lot of different forms. And for me, like I have like four degrees, right? I have a bachelor's, master's, a double doctorate, I have a postdoctorate and fellowships. I've traveled the world. I do a lot of public speaking forums, both in the scientific community and also for outreach to help others go through their traumas, how to learn to be resilient, on how to help people through their grief, to help people to realize that there's healing and it's a newer, stronger version, a 2.0 version of yourself, even after everything that you've been through. And for me, so I was avoiding when I was achieving all those goals. So those achievements I can't really count, right? So it's after I would say I got out of the military, and I was medically retired out with almost 11 years of being in the service. And it's because I got so broken, but I was determined not to have my brokenness define me. So I had to almost like rebrand myself. And then I actually was able to birth Synergem 3. So after, and it's something that I've been wanting to do since the 90s, since I was a medical student, but I was just so focused on getting my degrees and just kind of plugging away that I never took the time to like stop and do something for me. It's like it's something that God instilled in me that he wanted me to do to help others. And with Synergem 3 is I use different pillars, and I use like 7 different pillars to help people find their nirvana, to find their ultimate being, find their true self. And I help them through multiple levels of healing, being financial healing, spiritual healing, physical healing, mental healing, emotional healing, social healing, intellectual healing. I help you through all those different facets and realize how they kind of all interchange into each other. And they all have our different traumas and how those traumas affects our lives in so many different ways. And then there affects us, our relationship with God, a relationship with our family, a relationship with our significant others, people with our workforce. Everything that we do is based on how we deal with our traumas. And that sometimes it can help affect us financially. It affects us intellectually. Sometimes we can't get past these traumas that we can't even finish schooling, right? So I kind of help you, just like you do with your audience, help them figure out what traumas affected it, their stuck points. How can we overcome those barriers? How can we help you navigate and focus to get these accomplishments occurring despite everything, the chaos? A lot of times we feel like there's chaos, but a lot of times you can find that peace amongst the storm. And it's just helping people realize and find their inner genius throughout this whole process.
Wow, I love the inner genius. Oh, wow, I love that. Okay, so now Dr. Webster's, I'm calling you Dr. Webster right now.
That's okay. I get it.
It's befitting right now. It's definitely befitting right now. I mean,
Okay.
you came up with something so genius, Synergem 3. Tell us about Synergem 3 and what that actually, this is the name of her business. And I want you to tell us exactly what that stands for.
Yeah, so Synergem 3 means synergistically incorporating God, earth, and man cubed. So Father, Son, Holy Spirit, faith, family, finances. So I allowed God give me this vision. I said when I was back in the 90s, right? So I'm like dating myself, right? When I was in medical school. But the fact that I believe that if you ground yourself in your spirituality, in a higher being, whoever, you call God or the energy, whatever, universe, whatever you want to utilize, and then how the earth, right? I said the healing properties, so just putting your hand in the soil and becoming in tune with the earth. And then, for GEMM being man, but then also me being a doctor and was for medicine, but then also using holistic aspects of healing, medicinal healing. So using what God intended us used, medicine from the earth and not from pharmaceuticals and big pharma. So, and then realize that everything happens in threes. So for every pillar I take people through, it's actually 3 different elements per pillar. And then I always look like even with exercising, right? You always look like you have to stretch, you have to warm up, you have to cool down, you have to hydrate, but it's different things. But you realize that even with going through your spirituality, if you're going through your intellectual part, you still have to stretch your mind, right? You still have to strengthen the mind, right? And it also has to constantly, like I say, hydrate, right? Keep it going in that maintenance aspect, right? So if you can apply those principles to everything with life, it's just like we could actually achieve our goals once we could focus it. So like the whole thing you said, like you had that dream, right? It's like you manifesting what you wanted. You had your own vision board occurring in life. And then for me, I think for me personally, I have a lot of dreams, and especially us being in the military too, sometimes those dreams aren't so pleasant, but God could show us so many different things through our dreams, and he talks to us in so many different ways. So if we could just sit back and give ourselves that quiet time, that's key. You have to have that quiet time to hear what he's really trying to tell you, so that you can reflect and apply it, and not just keep that knowledge to yourself. You have to share it, right? You say, see one, do one, teach one. Like every time God shows you something, it's better for you to share it and allow that multiplication, that the fruits of your labor come forward, so that generations to come could also benefit from that. So with my company, Synergem 3, I just try to like show people, that find their inner genius, find that inner strength, that no matter what traumas that you go through, we still can get through this together and still achieve your ultimate being, the 2.0 version of yourself, the bigger, better, most improved version of you, despite everything happening in your
Oh my
life.
God, wonderful. Wow, that was such a powerful message right there. That you can achieve wonderful things, once you heal. There is life after trauma. And just because you had trauma in your life doesn't mean your life is over. I just really love what you're doing. And then the different pillars, and then the three, stretching, the nurturing, the hydrating, the strengthening, all of that is just so phenomenal. You know what? When God gives you something, it's from Him. You just
Yes.
know, because
Yeah.
the way that they are so perfectly aligned, it
Mhm.
can only come from a divine source, and I'm just so happy to hear about that. I'm glad you're here to share this with everyone too, because what we're showing them is that their dreams can be so huge, and as
Yeah.
long as they're willing to continue to move forward towards them, they can achieve their dreams just like you and I are achieving our dreams. And we're not even finished yet. There's still
No.
so much more
Yeah.
left for us to do, right?
Yes. So much more. So much
Yes,
more.
absolutely. And so, with everything that you have done, and just like you said, being able to move forward in spite of all of the ups and downs, twists and turns, life happening the way life does, right? Because life is going to happen, and,
Mm.
it's not going to happen on my time schedule.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't need a breakdown today, life. Can we schedule this breakdown for another day?
So true. So true.
Not gonna happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
you know, I find for me, it helps me to wake up with a positive attitude and
Mhm.
knowing that I'm gonna make it through the day. Now, some days, depending on what I'm going through, it might be a little rougher than others. But I
Mhm.
have my meditation that I do in
Yes.
the morning, because
Yes.
that gets
Daily.
my mind started on the right
Yes.
track. No
Yes.
stinking thinking, right? No
No
stinking.
stinking thinking.
So I got that meditation going, and then of course I pray. There are things that I do to sustain this
Yes.
momentum, to sustain everything that I have worked for, right?
Yes.
We've done,
Indeed.
to get to this point in our lives, we've done a lot of work, and it would be a shame to allow it to all just slide back downhill. That's
Yes.
not going to happen.
Not an
So
option.
No, it's definitely not an option. I was telling her this yesterday. You are such a no nonsense kind of person. You are a no excuse kind of woman. I like you. You're the kind of woman I like.
Yes, yes.
So, and so what we want to find out today is how does Ramothea Webster keep herself energized and supported? How do you sustain such a
Yeah,
positive attitude in the midst of everything that's going on? See, I know that there's a
yeah,
lot going on, but our audience doesn't know because you're so well poised and because you know what I'm saying? You are here giving us your best. Even
yes,
though we know that there's still some other things that happen in life, being able to
yes.
choose, right? To choose
Hmm.
this emotion as opposed to that one, to say, you know
Yes,
what, hey, this is what I'm doing today, this is
yeah.
my priority today. And so how do you do that? How do you sustain? Do you have meetups with like-minded people? How do you sustain all of that?
Yes.
Just tell
Yeah. So, and you really hit the key word that I always tell people is choice, right? You always have a choice.
me.
So, despite everything that's going on in my life, and I know we kind of discussed about this before that, but my mom right now is on hospice, and that's a struggle because when we deal with death, right, and so many different facets of death, and dealing with family members, but when you have someone extremely, extremely close to you and somebody who helped raise you, losing a child is one, but losing a parent is another, and then to see that. And then and last night we had a very, very, very rough night. So I'm actually operating on very little sleep right now, but I choose not to show that, right? When people look at me, they have no clue of the trauma that I'm going through, even as we speak, and the hurt and pain and sorrow that I'm feeling even right now. But I'm choosing not to wear that on my sleeves. I choose not to portray that on the world because it's not fair. The people around me that I come in close to, if I snap at them or yell at them or try to belittle them, why? Because they have no clue what I'm going through right now, and I have no excuse to transfer that energy on them because they didn't ask for that, and they don't deserve that. So now you think about that. I try and put myself in other people's shoes. How would they want to be treated? Despite what's happening with me, I still have to do what God has tended to me and be a good steward of my energy, of my time, of my gifts, despite the chaos that's happening around me, even as we speak, kind of thing. So everything I do, I do with an intention,
Yes.
and I think before I act, and I actually try to step back. And a lot of times I feel like having an out of body experience, like after you see yourself kind of almost like levitate from your body and kind of look down and say, hey, what is really going on? And this is this what right looks like, right? So what should I do in this moment? So I'm always self-reflecting. And I'm always self-evaluating. I'm always meditating and reevaluating and making sure I'm looking in the mirror and making sure, okay, I don't cast blame on anybody else. It's for me. I have to take ownership of that. And I choose how I respond to other people. Now, because people have their own baggage, right? And they'll try and put that on you, but it's up to you to receive it, right? But and try to call your own, but you don't have to, so you have to really learn how to block that negative energy and hold tight to your own positive energy and choose to hey, I choose to be happy, not sad. I choose to be positive and not negative. I choose to achieve everything God has wants me to accomplish, despite how the devil is trying to steal a whole bunch of things from me in my life.
Mm.
So it's choice. And that's the biggest thing because you have the power to choose what direction, that path in the road, that fork in the road, which direction you want to go, to the left versus to the right. And some roads are very, very narrow, some are very bumpy, some is very hilly, sometimes mountainous. Sometimes I cannot achieve this. But that's when you don't lean on your own understanding, lean on your own strength, you lean on the strength of God. So he will provide the way for you to go. Any situation, when you ever look back, he always shows you the way, that glimmer of hope. You just have to sit down, be still, and listen and trust. So when you take that leap of faith, when I was, especially when I was transitioning out of the military and had no clue what I was going to go into, I had to tell the Lord, I trust you, Lord. And I'm taking this leap of faith into this abyss, into this fog. I have no clue where my feet are going to land. I have no clue, but I trust that wherever I land is good soil and it's where you want me to be.
Mhm.
And once you release that and realize that you don't have to be that type A personality and keep everything under control and try and micromanage anything, and you just kind of release it, and it's like place it on the altar and leave it at the altar, walk away from it and don't pick it back up, and just let God help you work through it. And but you have to actively work it. You can't just passively sit back like, hey, God, do it for me. No, you have to actively make these choices. And action speaks louder than words. And people see how you act, not unless necessarily the words, but they see your actions. And they'd be utterly amazed that when people see what, how you're holding yourself, despite what's going on, it's like, well, I didn't realize that you were going through all that. Because that wasn't I wasn't allowing you to. It wasn't my intention. It was no need for you. Why? You shouldn't have to wear that on your sleeve, right? I'm not getting badges, and I'm not getting any medals for that. I'm not getting, like any accolades for showing all my sorrow and traumas, But if I can help you through it, and if I see that you're also going through what I went through, and I can show you my story, my testimony, all the mess that I've been through, and if I can help you, then I've done my part here on earth. So, like I said, it's your choice to choose correctly.
Wow, that was so powerful. That was so, so powerful. What I'm really happy about is your understanding that the things that you have been through in your life were not necessarily just for you to grow and strengthen, but for you to share your story with another person that
Yes.
could possibly be going through the same thing that you're going through. People that are coming behind us, going still in that domestic relationship, still in that fog, still in that guilt and shame, and haven't made it to where we have now. We have the opportunity to show them what is possible. We have
Yes.
choices. We can either wallow in what's going on, or
Mm,
we can say, not today.
not today.
I am equipped and prepared for this.
Yes, we
I
are.
already know, that my steps are ordered. I already know that God is in control, and I'm allowing him to be in control. And I'm just so
Yes.
happy to hear you say that.
Yes.
Having a choice wasn't something I was always able
Mm-hmm.
to have. It wasn't until I was able to heal from the trauma that my choices became possible, and that I became possible. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, it's
I
true.
became possible, and now I can make those choices. And now you can make those choices based on the work that you've done. And this
Mm-hmm.
has been so wonderful. Oh my gosh. I
Yes.
knew that this was going to be great. I knew that people were going to be able to get a wonderful, wonderful story from you, a wonderful, just a wonderful playback of what was, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happened, how
Yeah.
you grew from it, how
Yeah.
you how you achieved such success, and where
Mhm.
you are now in that mindset, and being able to give back to others and allow God to use you in such a mighty way. Oh my
Amen.
goodness, guys, this has been so amazing. And I know you have enjoyed this. I know you can say thank you whenever you're ready, but I know you have enjoyed this. And so before we close, so all good things must come to an end,
I
obviously, right?
know. I
Huh?
know. I don't want to leave. This has been awesome. This is so awesome. Like we need like a part two and part three or
I
something.
know,
It's
right? There's so
awesome.
much we could talk about.
Right? It's a tip of the
Yes,
iceberg.
yes, absolutely. And so I would like you to come from your heart, which you have been the whole time, and just offer closing remarks to anyone who is struggling with trauma, who hasn't found the courage yet to walk away, who hasn't found her voice yet to speak,
Mhm.
him or her, because we
Yeah,
know trauma does not discriminate
it
based on
doesn't.
age, race, creed, religion,
Yes.
lack of religion, any of that.
Yeah.
Trauma, is definitely a part of our lives. And so tell someone something wonderful. What would you say to them to help save them from themselves today and from their trauma?
Yes. So I know for me personally, and I'm speaking from the heart, and hopefully I'm able to speak to somebody in the audience right now who needs to hear this word. But I know for me personally, I'm a very strong woman. I feel like I had to do everything by myself. But we realize you're not an island by yourself. And you say it truly takes a tribe to say raise a child, to raise a community, but even to help develop yourself. And you're not alone. And once you realize that you're not alone and you're willing to release that responsibility that you put on yourself. If it's being a natural born leader, being the oldest, right? Going through life challenges on your job, it's like a woman in the workforce, being around a lot of men, you realize like, sometimes, I don't know, me personally, I would just go straight to the bathroom and just wallow, just cry, and then like pat it up like nothing happened and walk back out there. But like, how long are you going to keep doing that? How long are you going to keep that negative energy? Because negative energy manifests in different ways. It's like when stress kills, like no kidding. And it manifests our bodies in terms of our GI tract, our nervous system, our skin, everything that we actually do in everyday life and the choices that we make actually affects us physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. All that stuff manifests different ways. So when you are ready and realize that enough is enough, that you cannot hold this burden anymore, I beg you to seek help. So if that's your best friend, a neighbor, a sibling, a clergy member, somebody in your job that you trust, or sometimes just going out and calling us 800 telephone lines for domestic violence, or the suicide hotlines, or just there's so many different resources, even for veterans as well. There's so many different resources out there. We could just pick up a phone and it's 24/7 and just reach out to somebody, because you realize that you're not alone in this. There's so many of us struggling, because even with domestic violence, that 1 in 3 women are reported to have domestic violence, but actually I would say 1 in 2 women actually go through some type of abuse, and we don't report it, right? So you're not alone. You could probably look to your left and look to your right. Somebody is going through the exact same thing, and they could probably give you the tools to help you get through your exact same thing, because we could all learn from each other. So why hold it in? Don't hold it in anymore, because even though you're going through those traumas yourself, you have something to share as well. And you realize how strong you really are, being male or female, and you can help the next person. And even when you help, because I know with me, I do a lot of public speaking engagements, but when I speak about my traumas, it helps me to heal. So as I'm helping other people heal, I'm still healing. I'm still a work in progress. Like I'm not done yet either. I say all our lives, we had to learn to cope. And in some areas gets easier over time, but sometimes things still sting. It still hurts, but we're working through it. We're not going to give up on ourselves, and I'm not going to give up on you. So just realize you're not alone. Reach out to somebody you trust and love, and allow yourself to heal. Go through the process. Go on this healing train for recovery. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, that was so wonderful. Guys, we have had a treat today, and I'm sure you can agree with me on that. Thank you so much, Dr. Ramothea Webster. You have been a wonderful passenger today on the healing train. Thank you so much for bringing your warmth, your love, your transparency, and your authenticity to our platform. Thank you so much. And guys, you know where to find me. If you need your coach, you can find me at www.spiritsourceconnection, or you can dial me at 317-721-4315. And with that, I'm going to say, see you next time right here on the Healing Train. All right, guys, have a great one. Choo choo.
Choo choo. Thank you.
You're so welcome.